In this lecture, we're going to do an introduction to the writing process. Some of this probably will be a refresher for you, but it is a good thing to think about as we get started with writing pieces in this course. We're going to talk about two sort of overarching ideas here. We're going to talk about formal versus informal writing, and we're going to talk about product versus process writing. You're obviously no stranger to writing. Throughout your years of school, at work, your personal lives, written communication has always been an important part of your daily routine. So stop and take a few moments and think about some of the things you've written just in the last week. Feel free to stop the video and think about that for a few minutes if you'd like. So I'm going to start making a list here on the screen of some of the ways that we write, some of our types of writing that we do every day. So let's start thinking with the writing we do at work. Obviously, some of you maybe aren't working yet. You have many different types of jobs in many different areas, but no matter where we're working or how professional or whether it's a blue collar or a white collar type of position, you're always going to be doing some kind of writing. So some of the most obvious types of writing we might do at work could be emails, writing reports or case notes, patient records if you're in the medical field, incident reports, inventory information, instructions for procedures or how to operate things, or instructions for coworkers, things like that. And as part of your job search, resumes, cover letters, and other job search documents. I'm sure there are more, but those are the first few that come to my mind. So now let's talk about the types of writing we do at home. You're also probably writing emails in your home life, text messages, and sometimes text messages could be work related too. These things are not exclusive in these categories. I'm just thinking about the things that are maybe most common or most likely. Social media posts, notes to people, family, friends, things like that. Emails are a pretty broad category, and I think in a home environment, you might write emails to friends or family. You might also write emails to maybe your kids' school, maybe teachers or principals. You might write emails to customer service people trying to cancel accounts or get a refund for something, for example. So there are a lot of different ways that you are going to use email and some of these other types of media to communicate basically with a lot of different types of people. All right, so now let's think about what kinds of writing we do at school. Let's fix my bullet here. Okay. So think about the types of writing that you do in a school environment. Emails, again, seems to be a common thread here. In an online course, you might be writing discussion. You probably are going to be writing discussion posts. Certainly in this class you are. Assignments, those might be small, one paragraph or a few sentences, short answer types of writing, or they could be larger. It could be reflections or journal entries or things like that. They could be essays. Written exam questions, that might be long paragraphs or might be a few sentences here and there. The notes that you take for yourself during class. These are all types of writing you do at school. And again, there's probably more here that I'm not even thinking of right now. So let's take a minute and think about formal versus informal writing. I think it's pretty fair to say that most of the writing you do for work falls into the category of formal writing. You're probably interested in sounding professional when you write reports or emails for work. And so that writing is going to be more formal. You're going to use certain language. Your sentence structure will be different than it would be if you were writing emails, for example, to a friend or family member, in most cases. The same goes for writing for school. An email to your teacher or advisor is going to be written in a formal way, but the notes that you take for yourself in class are probably going to be more informal in nature. So the type of whether our writing is formal or informal really depends on the circumstance and the situation, the purpose for our communication, which we'll get into shortly, and the audience that we're writing for. So just to make a quick note here, I've been teaching and working with students for a long time, and I can tell you that many students do not write emails to teachers or other school officials in a formal way, but you really should. And so just think about that when you're emailing an instructor, even if it's an instructor that you've gotten to know well and you feel really comfortable with, they are still an instructor, and when you're emailing them, it's probably because you need them to do something for you, or you need an extension, or you have questions and you need their help, right? And so make sure when you're emailing people at school and at work that your emails are professional and more formal in nature. So start with an actual introduction. You don't need to call necessarily everyone professor or doctor or Mr. or Mrs., depending on how they want to be addressed. But you want to have an introduction, you want to state your purpose, and you want to make sure to be friendly and professional in your tone. We're going to talk about tone in a second too. Okay, so let's get into purpose, audience, and tone. These are three basic important considerations to make when you begin writing. Whether it's a 5-page essay or a 280-character tweet, doesn't matter. There's a purpose for your writing. The audience, obviously the readers, people who are going to look at what you're writing and read it. And then the tone, which is kind of the emotion that you want people to feel. So the purpose of your writing is your why. Why are you writing this piece, this email, this text, this essay? What is the end goal? Do you want to provide information? Do you want to ask a question? Do you want to convince the reader to agree with you or take some sort of action, like give you a refund? Your reasons for creating a particular piece of writing is your purpose. The audience is pretty obvious, right? Who are you writing the piece for? The audience and purpose will typically help determine whether the writing is going to be formal or informal. When writing a text to your best friend, you're probably going to use different words and sentence structure than writing an email to your boss. Sometimes we also need to keep in mind potential additional audiences. For example, you might write an email to a coworker and be tempted to write more informally. But you may need to consider the fact that that coworker could forward the email to a boss or someone else in your organization where you might want to sound more formal. Our targeted audience is not always only the group of readers that we intend it to be. So it's important to think about what kind of broader reach our written communication might have. The tone of your writing is the emotion that you want to convey to your audience. Do you want to sound professional and assertive, professional and friendly, casual but persuasive? Do you want your writing to invoke a somber mood or one of excitement? The way that you want your readers to feel after reading your piece is your tone. So let's go back to the list and take a look at how each of these things, purpose, audience, and tone, impacts various types of writing. So we'll just look at a few examples here. So for writing a patient record in the medical field, for example, your purpose is to provide information about a patient that is necessary for people to treat that patient and be able to document what treatment has already been done, right? All of these things are really important. That writing is probably going to be formal in nature. The audience for a patient record, the most immediate audience might be other medical professionals who are going to review the patient's record to determine next steps in the treatment or to review and make sure the proper treatment plan has been executed. But the audience could also at some point be the patient themselves, right? Because we can access our medical records. It could be an insurance company. So there are a lot of people here that could be potentially in the audience for a patient record. And so it's important that the writing is professional and formal and really descriptive. So the tone for something like a patient record is probably a formal, professional tone. You're not necessarily trying to invoke a mood in your reader, but you want it to seem, probably you want to sound somewhat trustworthy, right? Like you have documented all of the important information and there's really nothing to question. Looking at, let's say, a social media post. So what is the purpose of a social media post? Probably you just want to tell your followers something that happened, or you want to share some story about yourself, sharing information. Your audience, of course, is your readers, whoever you know on social media. But it is important to remember, depending on the social media platform and your settings, that your audience might be much larger than the people that you are actually friends with or who follow you on that site. So if it is a public post, if you're sharing something on YouTube or TikTok or something like that, then you have to understand and think about the fact that your audience could be much, much larger. And then the tone for a social media post probably is more casual, might be more friendly. You might want to make people feel happy for you or excited, or you might share a post about someone being sick, and you might want to, let's say you share a GoFundMe for someone who needs medical support or something like that, then you might want to make people feel inclined to donate. And so you're going to try to create a tone that invokes that feeling in people to make them want to be a part. You're trying to get them to take an action. At school, let's take discussion posts for an example. Your purpose for a discussion post is often to demonstrate that you have read course materials and that you can analyze and make connections. Sometimes discussion posts are more about just engaging with your classmates. Your instructor should tell you what the purpose of your discussion posts are. And if you don't really know, then you should ask. Your audience for something like a discussion post in a class is obviously going to be your classmates and your instructor. Your tone is probably going to be professional, right? In most cases, and formal. And you may or may not be invoking a feeling or an emotion in your classmates. You might be trying to convince them to agree with you about something. So there are many, many ways that discussion posts can be approached in terms of tone. So that just gives you a few examples of how purpose, audience, and tone impact all of these different types of writing.